Nos tienen como 100 personas, estamos enfermos, tenemos 10 días sin bañarnos, por favor, necesitamos ayuda. Miren cómo están ahí.
Esta es la comida que nos dan aquí.
Y maestro, quítese ahí, maestro, por favor. Sí, hombre, en vivo, estamos en vivo para que nos ayuden, viejo. Mira, ve, cómo nos tienen aquí migración, ve. 100 personas por 10 días sin bañarnos, sin comer. Mire el señor de 80 años, aquí tenemos más de días sin bañarnos. Mire cómo está aquí. Necesitamos ayuda, por favor, que nos tienen secuestrados. Aquí sí, aquí va.
ICE will no longer report the deaths of former detainees that occur within 30 days of their release from federal custody, raising serious questions about the quality of conditions.
The government owes a duty of care to the people in its custody. If the government cannot provide the level of care someone needs to live, then they should not be holding people in their custody.
Many of these deaths occurred after detainees were taken from an ICE facility to a hospital in need of medical care.
That's the standard of you are dying and now you get to go to a hospital. What is happening up until that point for other people? Death is not the only bad thing that can happen to somebody in detention.
Calls to improve conditions in ICE detention facilities have surged across the country, including recently at the Delaney Hall Immigrant Detention Center in New Jersey, where there have been protests and clashes with federal and local law enforcement over the past few weeks.
ICE is now saying migrants who work in custody are not employees, are not entitled to wage protections, and are no longer even guaranteed $1 per day. Guys, you know what this is, right? People are performing labor inside detention facilities, but they're being told that they're not employees. And they're also being told that labor laws don't apply to them. Immigration detention is supposed to be a civil space, not a criminal one. These detainees have not been convicted of crimes. They're being held in an administrative detention system, not serving criminal sentences. This is a violation of the 13th Amendment, which banned slavery and involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime after conviction. These detainees have not been convicted of crimes. And if you think that this stops with immigration detention, you are not paying attention. Because once government and private corporations normalizing extracting labor from people who have fewer and fewer rights and protections, the next question becomes, who else can be put in this category? We must abolish ICE and prosecute all those involved for crimes against humanity before it is too late.
I'm in our New York newsroom with some new and exclusive reporting. At least 500 babies and toddlers aged 3 and under have been detained by ICE since President Trump returned to office in 2025. That means that on an average day, ICE has 25 children 3 or younger in custody. Here is what else we found. Over the past few months, I have been working with our team here at MS Now and our reporting partners at the Marshall Project to learn more about America's youngest detainees. We're talking about babies and toddlers 3 years old and under. We analyzed immigration records obtained by the Deportation Data Project. We spoke with several families who were detained, and what we found was shocking. From March 2025 to March 11th, 2026, there was not a single day without at least one baby or toddler in detention. And many of these young kids in detention stopped eating, they began hitting themselves, and they became ill, according to their parents. I met a couple named Alsu and Azat who fled Russia last year with their then 1-year-old son, Amir. They feared that their opposition to the war in Ukraine would land them in prison and their son in an orphanage there. In Sacramento, they told me through a translator that they came here to escape prison, but instead, they spent 4 months in detention, 118 days. As their detention stretched on at the Dilley Detention Center in Texas, Alsu and Azat said that their son went more than 50 days without proper food, forcing them to hide cereal and rice so their son would not go to bed hungry. And that Amir's language development slowed while he was in detention. He stopped saying anything other than mom and dad. And Amir is not alone. Our reporting found between Trump's second inauguration and March of this year, ICE held at least 175 babies and toddlers for longer than the court-mandated time limit of 20 days. In comparison, during the last year of the Biden administration, no child aged 3 or younger was held beyond that 20-day limit. Our teams reached out to the Department of Homeland Security about these allegations, but the agency declined to answer specific questions after we refused to provide identifying information about our sources. DHS and ICE spokespeople did, however, provide statements dismissing the broader claims against Dilley as, quote, media lies, and saying conditions are, quote, safe, humane, and family-friendly. We also reached out to CoreCivic, that is the private company that operates Dilley. In a statement, they said it maintains age-appropriate accommodations and supplies to support the health, safety, and well-being of infants and toddlers. We have got a full, nearly 17-minute long piece airing this weekend on my new show, Connect with Jacob Soboroff, on MS Now. We have also got an article about our reporting that I hope you'll read on ms.now.
Today is Juneteenth, and if nobody ever told you why this is a big deal, let me help you out. You probably already know how slavery in America lasted for over 250 years. Well, eventually the government signed something called the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all enslaved people nationwide. But there was a big problem, because you just couldn't send out an email to all the slave owners. Back then, it took a long time for news to travel across the country. So in certain places, it took years for the news of freedom to reach the enslaved people. It took the longest for people in Galveston, Texas. They were enslaved an extra 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation freed everyone. So when Union soldiers finally got to them on June 19, 1865, they celebrated. And we have been celebrating that same day for over 160 years. So happy Juneteenth, y'all.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 40. As often as you did it to least of these who belong to me, you did it to me. Jesus said to his disciples, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, escorted by all the angels of heaven, he will sit upon the royal throne, and all the nations will be assembled before him. Then he will separate them in two groups, as a shepherd separates sheep from the goats. The sheep will place on his right hand, but the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed, get my Father's blessing, and here the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, you gave me food, I was thirsty, you gave me drink, I was a stranger, and you welcomed me, I was naked, and you clothed me, I was ill, and you comforted me, in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the just will ask him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or see you are thirsty and give you drink, and when did we welcome you away from the home, or clothe you in your nakedness? When did we visit you when you were ill in prison? Then the king will answer them, I assure you, as often you did it for one least of these my brothers, you did it to me. This is the gospel of the Lord. And in Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46, Jesus himself states, what you do to others, you do so unto God himself. Again, what you do unto others is what is going to judge you in the final judgment. And with everything that's happening right now here in the United States, especially with black teenagers being lynched, with children being abused, separated from their families, and of course being sexually assaulted, if not raped, in ICE detention facilities. Again, and with Trump's mass deportation program, which was correctly ruled as ethnic cleansing according to the United Nations, again, as a deliverance minister, I will reiterate, what you do to others, you do so unto God himself. There is a spirit of hatred, which, like the spirit of anger, gives demonic suggestion / temptation and thus susceptible to harm and kill others. As irrevocably proven that those with hatred in their hearts do unspeakable things to others, and this is shown every single time. And with this administration fueled by hatred, with so many dying in ICE facilities, again, this is reality. What you do to others, you do so unto God himself.
Holy Father, in Chicago, authorities banned Catholic priests to give communion to migrants in detention. Do you have any advice for them how to get spiritual communion when they can't get a real one? Yeah. And also, what kind of rights migrants under detention should have?
Well, let me say that I think in the first place the role of the church is to preach the gospel. And just a couple of days ago we heard Matthew's Gospel chapter 25, which says, Jesus says very clearly, at the end of the world we're going to be asked, you know, how did you receive the foreigner? Did you receive him and welcome him or not? And I think that there's a deep reflection that needs to be made in terms of what's happening.